Hey, how you doing? This is John, and welcome to Comic Book Team Up, the show where RJ and I have a third cohort. So this week we got Fabrizio Aiello, who is the creator of Horace H. Hoover, and
How's it
RJ,
going?
the creator of the Valiant Heroes, and he has a current Crom the Destroyer coming out, and I have Heroic Tales, which ended on Fun My Comic, and stupid amateur me forgot to put the store in demand, so I had it fixed today. So yes, for a couple of days you weren't able to get Heroic Tales, but alas, I've heard the lamentations of the people screaming in the streets. It's now available again. And that is why I'm very loyal to Fund My Comic. You don't get, when you make a mistake on Indiegogo, who helps you out? You know?
Yeah, they're not answering emails.
Right. Right. Yeah. Right. RJ, when you were shadow banned, who did you talk to that fixed the problem?
Oh no, I could not reach a soul.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like a void. You know.
It's all AI at this point. All of Kickstarter.
Uh, RJ, was it you who was telling me? Somebody was telling me that they tracked Indiegogo down to, I'm not even joking, to like a storefront above like a laundromat someplace.
Yeah, that was me.
That
Yeah.
okay.
Well, these are the kind of things because I do my research capacity is not just legal. I also work for used to anyways reporters and investigation companies and things like that. So I picked up a little bit of a tricks of the trade, and I was able to track down where their store frontage was, and yeah, it was above a Kinko's or something like that.
That's
It's funny
amazing.
when he's not live. It's just like he's sitting at his desk and he's got a shot glass and there's just light coming through the slots, and he's just like, she walked in. She was a dame. She had legs all the way up to her knees, and he just talks like that. And then he investigates. He's in this outside with the magnifying glass.
I have to get rid of any things behind me that might give clues to my location now.
Well, we already know it's an insane asylum.
Yeah.
It's an insane asylum where old fashioned curiosity caravans just come walking by. You know.
It's in between a church and a cemetery, which is my most favorite place.
You literally, you said that before. You do.
Yeah.
You live between a church and a cemetery.
It's seriously, it's my happy place. I listen to the church bells. I take walks in the cemetery. It's the most perfect place I can think
You,
of.
you and your wife Morticia just sit out in the rain.
That's like a friend of mine. He's a priest. They have the parish house right next to the church, and then there's the graveyard. And he goes, "Oh yeah, I love it here. The neighbors are so quiet."
Yeah, that was the running joke. We would drive by this huge cemetery every time we were going to my grandparents' house upstate. And every time we passed it, somebody in the family had to go, "Oh, look at that place. It's so nice. People are dying to get in there." It was like the family joke for I'm not even joking, like 19, 20 years.
The funny thing is, when I go for a walk in the cemetery, I mean, I've written down names to use in comic books because instead of having to Google something or a random name generator, because there's always these graves are pretty old, so they're unusual names, things you don't hear a lot. So I'm like, do a
Yeah.
little research in the cemetery.
My wife and I, when we first got married, we would drive up to Tarrytown, which is originally the town of Sleepy Hollow. It's in New York. It's just past Westchester, and it's a nice drive, especially in the fall when you see all the leaves change, and then you go to Tarrytown. It's like a quaint place. It's a nice touristy place, but it's not really overwrought yet. So it's just beautiful, and they have old cemeteries. My wife loves old cemeteries, and I thought it was weird until she made me appreciate it too. But they have an old cemetery with graves from the Revolutionary War, pre-Civil
Oh, wow.
War. And when we were there was people cleaning the stones, and I got to say, they just look like stones without any writing. But after they cleaned them, you can actually read the names and the dates and stuff. And you're right, you don't see like Ephraim Z. Tillinghast anymore. You know what I mean? These are Lovecraft names that just don't exist anymore.
Yeah, I think whenever you're writing, at least for me, I have to put myself sort of like either in a location, put on some music. You have to like get in sort of the atmosphere, and anything you can do helps.
Well, yeah, when you're in a when you're writing a superhero comic, I guess it's difficult. I know RJ when he's writing Crom, he wears just his underwear and he puts a towel on as a cape and he runs around the backyard with the shovel. Right, RJ. Am I wrong?
Yeah. I don't even think I own a pair of shorts.
Yeah, he's just naked. There you go. That's the truth. I was keeping it family friendly.
Yeah, me and the Sasquatch. Yeah.
I was thinking of you, RJ, the other day. I might as well show it, but I bought this sword. It's called the Viking Wood Splitter sword, and like they advertise it that you could chop wood with it, but so I took down limbs off a big tree and I was like, I'm going to break out the sword. So my neighbors must think I'm a crazy person because I got a neck brace on. I'm walking out in front of my house with a big sword, and I'm hitting. Man, you cannot cut wood, low. Like in the commercial, they had the wood set so that you can actually chop it, like it's high. But when the wood's down low, you can't chop wood with a sword.
No.
So I had to go buy an axe and a chainsaw. But you guys talk. I'll get the sword to show you what I'm talking about.
I would bet John has ended up on TikTok somewhere, like for his neighbors, if I had to guess.
Yes, one of those 30-second
Yeah,
things you see on the side of your YouTube channel.
I told you when I got to my car accident. For those of you who don't know, I passed out while driving, crashed right into a tree, and some kid came out with a phone, was filming, and I emerged from the accident, yelling and cursing because I'm all dazed. Turn off that effing phone! What the hell are you filming me for?
Oh, wow.
So I went on YouTube to look for crazy old man with a beard, person emerging from a car. I must have looked like a crazy Yosemite Sam. My hair was all crazy and
You should take revenge on the tree and just take your sword and go to town.
Oh, there you go. There you go. Oh, I can't even hold it. Believe it or not, this is really sharp. And they're like, oh, we'll put 2 words on the sword for free when you buy it. So I'm like, what do I want to put? Like, I didn't want to put my name, first name. So I got thunder and lightning because I'm a cool guy. But this sword it's real carbon steel. I mean, it's really sharp. It's just a little dirty because I was hitting a tree with it. But you don't have the leverage with the sword to cut wood. Like you have to put it up high so that you can come down on it. But I could, man, it's heavy too. Like I could, like when my friends come over, we play role-playing games. I'm like, hold the sword one-handed and how long before you get tired? And I don't want to hear you complaining about it. But
wow.
I love this.
Yeah, that's something.
I'm itching for somebody to break in.
I was just gonna say, forget a shotgun. Somebody walks in and they see that and they're like, yeah, I'm turning around.
I got a shotgun, but would you rather run from a guy coming at you like this? All right, so what do you got? You got a gun? I got a sword. You better kill me right away because I got a sword. So RJ's the guy up in the woods. So anyway, this is supposed to be a comic book channel.
Ish.
We were talking about before we went live. I had a couple of minutes. For those of you who don't know, I just had Tom DeFalco on my channel. I had a nice hour conversation, and we would talk about like artists like Ron Frenz and Ron Wilson, about how they seem to be having like at least in my circle, the fans are going nuts, reminiscing and talking about how much these artists mean to them. And at the time, in the 90s, everybody was talking about McFarlane and Mark Silvestri and Jim Lee. And, I talked with Frankie Washington, and he's going off on how much he loves Herb Trimpe. Like, I don't know. Like, I'd like to see all these classic artists come back, let them know that they are loved.
Definitely unsung heroes, no doubt. And I mean, admittedly, whenever I guess whenever Tom DeFalco's Thor run probably started, I was maybe 11 or 12. And at that time, I'm not looking at names. I don't know if anybody else was. I was just reading a Thor
Yeah.
comic, So it wasn't until later you start to look back. Wait a minute, Tom DeFalco, Ron Friends. You pick all of those old favorite comic books you had, and it's the same people over and over.
Yeah,
I didn't realize until, quite honestly, you just did that interview, how many Ron Friends comics I have, especially written by Tom DeFalco. I mean, the Thor run and the Fantastic Four, and then add on top of that all the rest.
yeah. I didn't want I didn't like the Tom DeFalco Fantastic Four run when I first read it, and I partially blame it because I missed so many issues. So that I was like, and he was even talking about he just made it a frantic pace. Like if you read it, the Fantastic Four never get a chance to rest. Like they're going from threat to threat to threat, like and it's like ups a scale from like Doctor Doom to the Celestials to Hyperstorm, to Doctor Doom again, and you know what I mean. You don't get and when you miss a couple of issues, you're like, what's going on? So that's my fault. So then I reread it, with all the missing issues, and it was so much better and so much more enjoyable than I remember. And Paul Ryan's art, oh my God, he draws like a modern Fantastic Four, but at the same time, it's the classic Fantastic Four. I absolutely loved it. It was so good, so fun. I'm still like reeling about that. I just talked to Tom DeFalco.
I know. It's amazing to me, though. I mean, now that we all do comics, the idea that they were doing it monthly, I can't wrap my head around that. I can't wrap my head around Tom DeFalco writing a comic every month when I need to like sit and ruminate, over one scene for days and days.
Well, I mean, I could imagine myself like, okay, I could write a script once a month and then hand it off to other people and they all worry about it. I could do that. Okay, John, here's your script. It's 22 pages, Patriarch. Boom, into the void. And then whatever time goes by, okay, here's another script into the void. Like if that's it, I think I could do that. But to write, to publish, to do all that, you know what I mean? Like, it's such an unbelievable task. And they did it, and they did it well. And I was kind of hinting about that. I think that's why the Heroes Reborn fell apart, because those Image guys were not known for their monthly grind. And I think when they would like making a deal with Darth Vader. It's like, it needs to be monthly. It needs to be. I don't care about your Jim Lee stuff. It needs to be monthly. We have, the Image. I guess when you're Jim Lee, the buck stopped with Jim Lee. But when you work for Marvel, what did you have? Perlmutter? What is his name? You had a bigger wig that was, let's go. And RJ, I know the Heroes Reborn were your favorite era of Marvel.
It stopped me from buying comics on a monthly basis, quite honestly.
Yeah. Was that the end? Like, I know now you're still buying comics, but was that the end of your hardcore collecting time?
Yeah. Besides, I buy collections after that and old stuff. That was it. After the Heroes Reborn, I picked up things, and quite honestly, the price on the cover just didn't justify the story inside, and that's how I justified it to myself, even though I severely missed it.
Yeah, I'm such an oldie. I remember going, when comic books are 40 cents, that's ridiculous. That, like, I think they were like 30 cents at the time. I'm like, 40 cents is ridiculous. 40 cents might as well be free at this point.
I think they were 65 at my earliest recollection. 65 was whenever I was starting. Heroes Reborn, that whole era, I did the same. I kind of left the monthlies. At that time, I think I was headed to college, maybe something like that. And then I went back and I started buying collected. I'm like, oh, I'll grab this, whatever, collected stuff. And then I started kind of buying monthlies. But it's funny how that's where a lot of people started, the Heroes Reborn Image. Right. And then that's where a lot of people jumped off. It's like this swapping.
Yeah. We didn't like it. Other people loved it. Like, how many people right now are like a 90s Image mini revival going on right now? And I'm like, to me, that was like the beginning of the end, of comics. I'm never really a fan of Image comics.
Oh, I'm sorry. I did want to mention the one thing about Tom DeFalco. Did you get? So I mentioned the Right Project, and that was his Kickstarter or crowdfunder with Sal and
See, I didn't know anything. I stopped talking. I didn't know anything about it.
it was a couple of years ago. I might be wrong. Maybe it's 3 or 4 years ago. I saw his name pop up. I'm like, surely that's not right. And Sal Buscema and Ron Friends, and I think it might have raised like 6-7 grand or something like that. I got it. It was fun, but yeah, I was curious on how that came together.
Your face lit up when you mentioned it.
Yeah, I
I
I
didn't
love
like-
the idea that they were working together.
Yeah, now I gotta, and that's the thing. Like, I won't be able to get that on eBay or at a back issue store. Like, where can I get the Right Project #1? You know, maybe I'll message Tom DeFalco, see if he has any copies I can buy off him. So, by the way, you have a comic called Horace H. Hoover from Gloomy Wood. Is your imprint now?
Yep.
Yep.
Horace H. Hoover, New York City's greatest space-time occult detective, Vacuum. 5-issue miniseries, occult mystery, 5-issue miniseries, and I'm on issue 3 currently. So, you know what? I have them. Look at that.
Yeah,
Issue 3.
You can show them.
Um,
Last week, your name came up when we were talking about coloring. Let RJ last week. What was his name? Eddie.
Oh yes.
I was really, really taken back by how talented he was, and we were talking about coloring, and I brought up how you, Fabrizio, you purposely limit your color palette on Horace H. Hoover, and I know you know, but what was the number that you told me? It escapes my mind.
is it like 78? I could actually find it to be, but I think it might be 78 or 90 colors or something like that. And I stick to it. It works for the story, and it works for my process too. Whenever I sat down and I'm like, I can go a couple different directions with the art and everything. I can do more pen and ink, technical pen. I can do more brush. Before I really settled on something, I wanted to try a few different things, and I actually tried the technical pen, and I enjoyed it, but it wasn't Horace H. Hoover. The character, you need if you I'm trying to think of a really unique style. Like if Bernie Wrightson did Spider-Man, that's a different Spider-Man.
Yeah.
So I wanted to make sure the style matched the character with colors, inks, and everything. So I tried a few different things. I tried more of like a desaturated, like earthy tone palette. And it worked insofar as it was cohesive, but I don't think it didn't elevate any other aspects of the story or the character. So once I got that limited color palette, it popped, it felt right, and I love it for Horace. I don't think I would go back and change a thing.
Marcus said this about the Right Project. He said he heard of it, but they didn't do any promotion for it. I didn't even hear about it, and I feel bad because first off, I'm a DeFalco fan, I'm a Buscema fan, and you said Ron Friends was the other guy.
Yeah,
yeah, I like all three of these guys. These guys are all legends, and I like to think I'm paying attention to what's going on in the the weirdo crowdfund comic books sphere, and I didn't know anything about it. So I wish I had a channel. Did I even have a channel when he was doing this?
Man, I don't know. Like somebody will have to look. It might be 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, 3 years ago it was me talking through my phone to myself. That was my channel. So maybe.
But yeah, I think Marcus is right. I don't think they actually did any promotion for it, and I honestly can't remember how I came across it. It was dumb luck, I think.
Yeah, I feel really bad. I didn't know anything about it. I wish I knew.
So something I've been thinking about. I want to talk to you guys about this. Sure. Action scenes, just because I've been sort of like immersed in this. So issue 4 is sort of like the end of sort of the big arc in the 5-issue miniseries. Issue 5 is going to be a one-off, and this is the culmination. This is the end. So there's a pretty big action scene, And before I start something like that, I kind of try to dissect it and think, what do I like about an action scene? Are there action scenes in particular that I can think of that really influenced me? And I maybe went a little too deep dive into that. But something I think I did come across, at least for my own book, is that I think an action scene should do two things. It really should, the good guys beat the bad guys in some way, right? But other things should be happening,
Well, I mean, I'm writing my character, the Patriarch. Next issue, or this first issue is like a series of actions, but the next issue, it's a main villain story, and there's a battle scene. Now, I could have made 13 pages of them fighting, or I could have made 1 page of them fighting. It all amounts to the same thing. It's just at one point, is it gratuitous? Is it like serving the story? And I've come to the conclusion, and again, I'm an amateur. I've only, I'm getting my second comic illustrated right now. Like there has to be something clever in an action scene.
Yeah.
Like, okay, this is the magic punch that beats the Mole Man. This is the magic punch that defeats the Green Goblin. Like, okay, Green Goblin gets punched, Spider-Man gets punched, punch, and then one of them collapses. That's really all an action scene is. So there has to be something clever.
Yeah.
I
think so. At least for me, because I wrote a pretty decent scene, and I'm like, okay, this is a cool. Like you said, it was punch, 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 and then it ends, and I'm like, that is not satisfying. It really has to, like you said, there has to be. They outthink the bad guy. They're doing something in the background that defeats it. Something, setting a trap. I don't know. Something else has to happen. If not, even writing and drawing it feels kind of boring. Although,
RJ, you're doing a barbarian book, like, you know what I mean? Like,
well, I was just thinking, honestly. I talked about this. I think it was probably 2 weeks ago, maybe a little bit longer. But I'm going into a lot of different stuff, which is movie scene dissection and watching a lot of things like that for visuals, right? And because I was writing a scene from Thomas Valiant 2 right now for Renzo, and it was a lot of explanation. So I went and I watched this video. It was about Indiana Jones, the first one, and there's a scene where they're visiting the old guy who's telling them what the talisman says. Anyways, it's a whole bunch of exposition, but they're saying, okay, look at this scene and then watch how the exposition is cut in here and there with these little bits with the monkey and grabbing the fruit, and because it's poisoned, right? They're trying to put that little bit in to have a break with the exposition, so you're not just listening to people talk. But it works the other way around as well. If you have nothing but an action scene, have something static, like in the background, like you said, have something very small in the background, a panel here, a panel there, maybe, because I'm doing this myself with, I can't remember what book I'm working on. It might be Fade to Blue right now, but action scene, and there's one panel on every page where something almost still is happening, and it contributes to the end of how the entire battle is going to play out. It's not so it works in both ways. If you have a very still, static exposition, cut in some little bits of intrigue or action, whereas if you have too much action, cut in a little bit of still and intrigue, and then have an impact on your story. That's what I would do anyways, because that's what I'm doing right now. I'm writing 4 books at once, so I can't even remember which one it is.
God.
Because I'm thinking, I have my character's abilities. I talk about this every time I turn on the camera, that it's an outgrowth of my role-playing game. So I actually wrote my numbers and stats for the Patriarch. I actually wrote the numbers and stats for the bad guys. So like at some point I would like to do a resource book of all the characters with their official rules, stuff like that. So I'm like tempted to like actually roll dice and roll out their fight, and do it like a role playing, just to see like how many punches would it take, I know that's goofy because it's like, oh, you're the writer, write the story, but like it really boils down to I punch you, You punch me, I punch you, you punch me, and then sooner or later the writer has to decide. Okay, that's the grand slam punch that ends the fight. So like in issue number 1, I mean, everybody's seen the cover. It's got these robotic ants, and there's an army of robotic ants attacking. So I just didn't want it just to be like he fights ants, and then so I tried to come up with like a logical way to end the fight. Like everybody understood, okay, the fight's over. Like obviously in a sword fight, the guy gets stabbed, blood comes out. But a superhero fight with punching and
yeah, it's almost like you need like the fight should have like a mini 3-act structure to it. Like it's so anyway, it's something I've been working on, and it's interesting, because I don't want to just jump headlong into something. I should show it sometimes. I have pages and pages and pages of thumbnails of fight scenes. And I'm like, all right, this is not getting me anywhere. I just need to think about it differently.
Like think about like superhero comic books. Like, okay, this guy shoots like Cyclops. Okay, he shoots the IB at Magneto. Magneto shoots the magnetic ray back. We all know that it's an energy blast, but like we okay, so this energy blast is the magic blast. Or Voltron is the perfect example. It just goes back and forth, and then he takes out the sword and ends the fight. Which, every adult is like, well, why didn't he just take the sword out at the beginning? Because we needed to fill 18 minutes. So am I wasting time filling 6 pages with the useless fight? Is that what people want to see? Or do people want to see the patriarch and the other guy talk?
Yeah.
Do they want to see, him and his wife, like existential angst over eggs and bacon in the morning? You know what I mean? So so I really am struggling like with an exciting fight sequence rather than just like that's what people want. And then okay, Renzo, 6 pages of fights, whatever you want to do. Just I'll pay you draw 6 pages of fights, and then Renzo will come back with beautiful naked ladies for no reason whatsoever.
That's the static thing in the background.
That works too.
I always write backwards, so I write basically I do an outline which has every page outlined what basically is going to happen on it, just with 1 or 2 sentences, and then I have about on a normal. So I usually use 3-act structures, so I have 3 chapters within a lot of my graphic novels. So the normal chapter where there's not the big fight scene, I usually leave fallow 2 to 3 pages just in case I need to run over and I don't fill up. I take more time than I usually think I will to say some of the things, but within the fight scene chapter, usually I leave at least 5 pages, and then I'll come up with. So I use that restriction in order to say, okay, so I'm always writing the thing with the idea that I only got 5 pages to write. Or however many pages I left myself to write the big battle. So I got to make sure that the whole thing will fit into it. And funny thing that you should mention, John, about rolling. One of the things, quite honestly, I don't know if this will mean anything to you at all, but I used to submit a lot of stories to Dragon Magazine back in the time when it was physical. One of the things they would tell you all the time was, if this sounds like you and your guys playing your tabletop, I'm not going to read the story. I'm going to throw it away. So that's the one they always told when they sent back my stories, like, change this, change that, kind of explanation. Anyway, that's just my experience.
If I wrote a comic book that was true to my role playing sessions, it would be 19 pages of 3 superheroes coming up with a plan that just doesn't work. and me as the game master just sitting there like looking at my phone. Are you guys ready to go?
Yeah.
Ready to go?
You can do that. You just cut away.
Chapters of buying supplies.
Yeah. Oh man. It's funny that I don't know how this guy, he just messaged me, and my friend Mike and I, we were at a point where nobody could play anymore. So we were desperate to get more players. And this one guy invited us to his house, and he played Dungeons & Dragons, and it was excruciating. And then I was like, how about every other week we switch? I'll for the superhero games. He was like, oh yeah. But him and his friend, like in the middle of everything, they would stop. And what did they say? Let's come up with a mission statement. and it was excruciating. And they beat the bad guy. They high-fived each other, and then they're like, let's write a mission statement. For like the next 2 hours, they were coming up with like the purpose of their superhero team, a mission statement. When Mike, he was, this was before cell phones, but he was giving me little notes. Let's get out of here. This, it was. So yeah, you don't want those stories written in comic book forms. Like, so that became a catchphrase with me and my friends. Like, all right, we just beat up the bad guys. Yeah, time for the mission statement. And then
time to do a business plan.
Yeah, let's. I remember one of the adventures was all signs pointed to the guy who worked in like the surveillance. It was like an Army Navy store. That guy sold the bad guy some equipment. So they were going to go in and muscle him. Like, what would the Punisher do? Kick open the door, grab the guy, and be like, who do you work for? Blah, 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 blah. They drew him. These guys were superheroes. One of them could shoot laser beams. One guy could fly. One guy could turn invisible. And you know what I mean? Like, these guys were legit Fantastic Four. They mapped out. They needed me to draw a map of this, Radio Shack. And they waited till after they snuck in. They hid under the counters, waited for the store. I'm like, dude, just kick open the door. Oh my God. So yes, RJ, nobody wants to read my adventures as a comic book. I agree.
I'm just looking at the chat here and I see K-Pop Junkie. I never seen K-Pop Junkie in the chat before, but I do watch a lot of her stuff on X, which is great.
Yeah, K-Pop, come on in and come on my channel one of these times. So yes, I agree. Like what you and your friends role play is not suitable for a comic book. So like I was joking when I say like rolling the dice, but like I'm like, how many punches would it take? Like, okay, this will be like 6 panels,
It would be fun to figure that out. It's something that Ben had mentioned on Twitter, and because I'd asked this question on Twitter before I started, and he said it's about seeing your hero struggle and kind of get beat down. And as soon as he said that, that really resonated with me because I was thinking of, in particular, like speaking of the Ann Nocenti run, where for like 5 issues Daredevil just gets beaten up, just over and over and over again, and that always stuck with me. So I'm like, yeah, that really is part of the stuff that I like. So I'm like, all right, I'll work a little bit of that into it. I'll work a little bit of clever or this or that. So anyway, it's almost like another part of writing. It uses a different part of your brain.
Well, that's exactly what it is. Because I mean, for the ultimate fight within Thomas Valiant #1 had all these characters, and they're fighting, well, basically Thor, and just because they weren't a cohesive team anymore, that things just went south. And so everybody tried to do their part, and just because they weren't following the plan and things like that, the whole thing went south. And that's where the fight followed. And I was building up tension to the fact that these guys are not going to win in the end, right? These are the good guys, but they're not going to win because they're falling apart, right? It's always in service to the story is what I'm trying to say, I guess. Yeah. Service to the story is what it needs to be, even with every panel. Even in the fight scenes, if you ask me. And again, I did my breakdown of the best fight scene ever in a comic book, which was Chris Claremont and Paul Smith doing Wolverine and Silver Samurai. The whole thing was done without words. It was done over, I think, 3-4 pages. But I mean, every last single movement, you could follow everything that was going on, and it is beautiful to behold. So fight scenes can be masterfully done.
Now that because you have a team book, I it's no secret that I'm introducing a superhero every comic. Patriarch is the flagship character. Then I have another, and sooner or later the team will form, and I already have the fight in my brain for the team, and I'm choreographing it. However many years, but right now I have a luxury of just a superhero fighting 1 or 2 villains. So I know you have Slurp and Max and Horace and whoever else may show up. So do you have like a choreograph it? Like, do you think, what is Max doing right now? Like, because I know so many times in every comic, even some of my favorite comics, you're like, Scarlet Witch is standing there doing nothing. Like I found myself saying like, even my favorite comic of all time, Avengers 165, they're fighting Count Nefaria, and I'm like, and Black Panther's just standing there doing nothing. You know, what is Black Panther doing at that moment? Because he's a great hero in his own right. He should be punching Nefario.
He didn't get
Or
tagged
you
in.
get
Yeah.
the Falcon in his Avengers run, standing there in the corner complaining. It's like,
Yeah.
I'm the token character, black character here. So that's all you get, right?
Well, you're not even going to be that unless you get yourself in there. Graviton's attacking.
Yeah, with multiple characters, it is difficult because Max and Slurp aren't there for every sort of altercation, but at the end they are, and they have to do something very specific to their character and their abilities, and it has to be believable. So, yeah, it's funny because there are times where I'm like, I'm not doing a team book, but at
But
certain
you are.
points, I mean, I am, because they are very much involved. So I have to I'm like, yeah, and they can't, like you said, stand in the corner or occasionally do something. Just to I forgot about Slurp. I gotta have him do something so people at least know he's there. So there, it's
Honestly, you did the Valiant Heroes, so you did a full-on team book. Like, and I'm of the opinion if you're writing the Avengers, it's okay if Thor has the spotlight for most. But I think like every Avenger has to have like a moment. Otherwise, like the Fantastic Four, like you don't want to just have Human Torch like, well, I need to go to college again, and why is he on the team if he's not going to do? But that's fine once in a while. But how do you do that? I mean, the Valiant Heroes, you had like, I'm not even exaggerating. I think you had almost like 18 characters fighting at one point. Did you choreograph that? Did you think of it, or did you just say, Renzo, draw?
Well, the thing was that for the heroes, I knew exactly the fact that I had to give everybody something to do. And
Right.
there is a point where each of the heroes shine. But the fact the matter is with the villains, I only had like 2 or 3 villains, but Renzo kept on coming up with these beautiful designs for these throwaway characters. And I said, I can't just have them as being throwaway characters anymore. I mean, the 3 guys who were manning the security system, right? Which was basically a Foe, Hawkman, Omak, and Adam, and Renzo just come up with these beautiful characters. And I said, okay, they got to come up. They got to show up at the very least, at least one more time in this book. And they show up at the end of the big battle scene and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, not for the villains, but for the heroes, definitely.
Yeah, it's like I do want a storyboard. Like I don't know, stick figure it out on my own because I can't draw to save my life. But like, do you do it? Would you said you have thumbnails of these fight scenes? Do you make it like a little storyboard?
I mean, oh yeah, I thumbnail everything anywhere from 1 to 6 times. So
Really?
like I have multiple versions of entire issues that have been thumbnailed out. And I just need to know what's on the page. If I put 4 panels in the thumbnail, when I go to draw it, I don't zoom or I don't like enlarge it in Lightbox. I start from scratch. I just know that these are the things that have to happen on this page. So whether it's 2 or 5 or 10, that's fine to change on the fly. But it's the only way I can maintain my pages.
And here's another thing. Like I don't know if you guys have ever been in real fights. Believe it or not, I've been in a few real fights in my life. I guess I got that kind of personality. I've never pontificated in the middle of a fight.
No.
Picking up that cue stick. Oh, you're gonna get it now. I'm gonna wallop you into next Tuesday. What do you feel about word balloons in the middle of a fight?
I mean, I'm okay with it just because I feel like that's comic books.
Right. Yeah, that's what I feel too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They got to say something. Like, I when I first did my script for my first comic, it was just world building the comic, and it didn't focus on. And then I did the exact opposite. You were done reading it in 30 seconds. You know what I mean? Like, so I'm like, oh yeah, this whole fight scene. I'm like, well, the people don't talk during fight scenes. I'm like, yeah, but it's a comic book. And then I'm like, well, what would they be saying? It's kind of tough. So, yeah, but I kind of like the idea of Ben Grimm. I'm gonna punch you into next Thursday as he's throwing a punch.
At least for me, it's kind of easy because Horace says everything he's thinking out loud always. Right. So he's always going to be saying something out loud. But yeah, I agree. I don't want to. I want a comic book to take time. I want it to like engage me for a certain amount of time. If not, it's like fruit stripe gum. It takes 5 seconds and it's over, and you forget about it, and you're on to the next thing.
I think one of the great things about comics and superhero comics, and what we do anyways, is that you can have massive amounts of power differences between people. And if somebody's outmatched, then yeah, you go ahead and have your villain, pontificate, because he's just, he knows he's going to cream this person, right? Why not just take a few extra minutes and rub it in?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, think about it, like football players. When they think they've made the touchdown, they're turning around, taunting people. I mean, I think it's kind of a natural thing once people think they've won, to taunt.
You saw that clip of that woman in the race that started celebrating a little too soon, and then somebody passed her and won the race.
Yeah.
That's like every comic book. That's every superhero, right? Okay, you just made me think of something else while I was talking about like talking during a fight. What do you guys feel about word balloons versus thought balloons versus captions?
I use thought balloons. I don't use them very much, but I do use them definitely to try and explain the story a little bit more. But again, it's something that I use very sparingly. I don't like caption blocks. I just don't.
It's funny because I had a lot of caption because Patriarch is a solo hero, so like it's not like he has Patriarch Jr. that he's explaining everything to. So I had a lot of caption, and then I changed it to thought balloons, because he's not going to be flying, talking out loud. So I'm like, you know what? I'm bringing back thought balloons, and then in the second issue, it makes sense that he's keeping quiet, but conveying it. So he has a lot of thought balloons because of the situation that he finds himself in. But
although I think that switching between the two is a good thing, because with Crom the Destroyer, I'm doing that exact thing. It's like, okay, there's a narrator basically, right? But at the same time, there's the narrator only comes in every once in a while. It's like 5 or 6 pages, then we get thought balloons, then we get deep into the story, then you switch up, right? That's what I find. If you're going to use them, don't use them like Marvel does or DC right now, whereas they're telling the entire story with capture boxes. Use them sparingly and mix it up.
So you're saying don't use, because originally I had the captions that were the Patriarch's thoughts, and then I said just put them in thought balloons, and then captions will just be like this omniscient narrator, like Science City 2024. You know what I mean? Just convey information that directly to the reader.
Yeah, I mean, for me, if Horse was a slightly different character, I'd be using thought balloons. I prefer them. Again,
but he doesn't. He if he thinks it and it's out of his mouth.
Yeah, for the most part. So, but
man with no mouth likes to talk.
Yeah, and it is fun. Spoiler alert: I wrote one panel of Horace H. Hoover for fun.
Yes,
and it was a blast.
That's great.
I just wrote word for word what I wanted him to say, and then I just went to a thesaurus and took the most complicated word possible. And I'm like, oh, okay. So, take that spoiler however you will, people. But it was so fun. Much fun. It was so much fun.
Yeah, I mean, for me, and I mean, for all of us, I'm sure it's fun jumping from character to character. First you get to be, really wordy with Horace, and then I can be real like terse with Max, and then I can, I can say whatever I want with Slurp because nobody really has translated him for the most part. So I mean, man, that's all. That's the best part is jumping from head to head.
Yep. RG, do you have like again, you have 8 million characters in the Valiant Heroes. Do you have different modes of speech? Like, okay, Thomas.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. Because just think of Pulse. Pulse is very old.
Yeah, Pulse. I couldn't remember.
He basically uses a lot of 1930 slang. and I'm always looking up 1930s slang to make sure that it's correct, and things like that that's going to come out of his mouth. And he's also a soldier, so he also uses a lot of military terms. Same with
It's one of my
Thomas Kelly.
favorite lines in your comic is, "I'm freezing my ball cap off." I'll never forget
That was
line.
the trailer, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he doesn't want to curse. He's the guy from the 1930s. The guy from like a black and white movie from the 1930s. That's what I'm going for with Pulse. Yeah.
So is it, your characters, Fabrizio, they can't speak alike. Even to a casual reader who just, it would be messed up if Horace and Max spoke the same. So you have to change the style of speech.
Yeah, to the point where, if I ever get this far, there's an issue where there will be a point where Horace speaks very plainly, and it should be like a signal essentially to like the reader, and because of that change, it would have to be kind of subtle. But I'm like, oh, that would be interesting if all of a sudden he slipped out of his Horace voice into another voice on purpose, not because I forgot how to write Horace.
No, he's like over the top. If all of a sudden Horace, like you said, if all of a sudden he would just like stopped and was just like, it said something matter of fact, I think it would be like a terrifying moment.
Yeah.
It would be kind of scary. I like what Tyson's saying. I like how DC does Swamp Thing and Dream. I think you're talking about like the individual word balloons. Like Swamp Thing had that like orange, and the letters themselves were scratchy, and then Dream had like, it was almost like there was black vaporous cloud word balloons. I was thinking about that in the second issue. I'm trying to talk without spoiling anything. The Patriarch, the bad guys, I was thinking of giving them individual word balloons, but I'll worry about that. Let me finish issue number 1. But I do like that idea. Like, it conveys like a sound, like the Vision. We all agree the Vision had like squared off yellow captions. And did anybody read old Vision in a different voice in their head? Like, to me,
Yeah, I like that. I think there's definitely a line, with somebody so unique as the Vision, or the Swamp Thing, then I think it really adds to it. If you had more than one character doing that at the time, I think it would be confusing. But I like that. In issue 3, I have a character who has very specific word balloons.
Yeah, it does. It gives a voice. Now, you letter your own comic, right, Fabrizio?
Yeah.
Who was I talking about lettering? Because I have Bill Williams lettering, who's a phenomenal letterer, and I just trust it implicitly. It looks great, but like sometimes like one letter is in bold and not, and it seems like when we, like right now I'm listening to myself talking, that's why I stopped. Nobody talks monotone, so like when you just write everything in the same, like my friend lettered his own comic, and I said, you got to get somebody else. Lettering isn't that expensive, because it reads like this and everything, like nothing has any emotion, and the letterers really do have like good lettering. You almost don't notice, but you do notice bad lettering.
Yeah. That's one of the things I was trying to do, especially with Crom the Destroyer, is in trying to get a feel of basically the 1970s Conan the Barbarian from Marvel, and they do that spectacularly well. The letterer does it spectacularly well. There is emphasis on words. There's emphasis on specific parts of words and letters. And when I was working with Eric Weathers, he doesn't do that. He won't. He basically will just say, I'm putting it this way, that way, and he'll give you exactly what he's going to do. That's why when I got your letterer, John, to work on Rampaging Thor.
You work with Bill now?
Well, I mean, I can't remember who worked on Rampaging Thor with me off the top of my head, but I had him do the different size lettering and all that kind of stuff.
And he's good. And not only that, he'll fix my spelling. He won't fix your spelling. I'm not an editor.
Yeah, I think bold and italic and all of that, it adds a cadence. And so what I'll actually do is, after I write my dialogue, I'll say it out loud and I'll act it. And that's where I'll get my bold, accentuation from.
Yeah, yeah. That's right. I forgot. Yeah, but Bill were good, good. And I'd be remiss my duty if I didn't say that Bill Williams, my letterer, also has a crowdfund right now. He's on Indiegogo with Blackheart and Valentine. It's all the stuff that he did with Bill Williams, Bill Willingham, for a phenomenal comic called Pantheon from Lone Star Comics that came out in the '90s. Really good stuff. So you're going to see some great art by Bill Willingham, written by Bill Williams. I know the names are so similar, and others whose names I can't. But it's not a continuation of the Elementals comic, but it's a continuation of the Elementals comics. And then we got Valiant Heroes is on Indiegogo right now, and Crom the Destroyer is on Indiegogo right now, and Horace H. Hoover is not crowdfunded; it's on your site.
Yep. Available to order now.
Yeah, the first 3 issues. When's the 4th issue going to be ready?
I'm thinking fall. I am going to do a crowdfunder for issue 4. So I've decided that I'll have a campaign and
because
crowdfund
I
that.
think people like the event and the pageantry of it.
Yeah, and I am so excited about issue 4 that I want to try to make it as big of an event as I can. I'm really happy with it. It's sort of the end of that arc. So I'm thinking November, December might be fun.
Oh, cool. So issue 4 is going to have the culmination. So issue 5 is just people sitting around drinking coffee.
Yes. Actually, Horace, Slurp, and Max are just talking about the previous issues.
Yeah. There you go. Whoa, what a revolting development that was. It's a clip show, and then it's... Remember when...
It's a bloopers show, so it's like Horace, using the wrong word or mispronouncing things.
Almost didn't get out of that one, and then I went to the other.
I did want to do a behind the scenes where, the spoiler, but I was going to take a scene from issue 1 where like the big tentacle comes like through the wall, and then I was going to rotate it so it looks like a set. So there's wheels and it looks like plywood in the back.
That's funny.
So it'd be like police squad when they did that.
Yes, exactly. But issue 5 is actually it's a one-off. It's going to be pretty ambitious. My page numbers keep going up, so we'll see. We'll see if I can keep it lower. But
tell me about it. So my first issue of Heroic Tales that I hope to be shipping by the end of the next month. Holy mackerel! I keep telling people it's 32 pages, but it's 34 pages. It's 34 pages, and issue number 2, it's 37. It's close to 40 pages,
wow.
and if I hit a stretch goal, I'm gonna have an 8-page backup. So, geez, what am I doing? What am I doing?
Yeah, that's a lot of comic.
Yeah, we're going to learn that Slurp is a ladies' man. Yeah, on his planet, he's considered very attractive. Or Dimension, or wherever he comes from.
Yeah, we won't learn about that until later. But issue 5 will be fun.
Yeah. So you issue 5, and then we're done with Horace H. Hoover, right? Or are you going to go right into an ongoing, or are you going to take a break?
I'm going to switch back and forth. I have a couple of stories that I want to do. Actually, probably the first thing that comes out after the 5-issue miniseries might be a book of short stories that I'd like to publish.
Comic book or
no prose, just a book of short stories.
There's no pictures?
Well, I mean, I'll be drawing the cover. But then after that, I have a couple ideas. I think in my head, at least, I'd like to take 1 year-ish and do a chunk of a story, release it, maybe switch back to Horace, and kind of have different titles going at the same time. I like that idea.
Are they all going to be like a Gloomy Wood universe? Or, you know what I mean? Is it set in the same planet, or
probably not the same universe? The genres are going to be pretty different. One's more like a dark fantasy. One might be sort of dystopian future. So it's going to be pretty different. I mean, as far as like the art is concerned, I want to draw some different things. That way, when I get back to Horace, I'm just a better artist. So, but I'm pretty excited about some other ideas I have.
RJ, you got the Valiant Heroes is classic superheroes, and then Crom the Destroyer is low fantasy, but this is the same world.
Yep, and I have Fade to Blue, which is coming out, which is also basically film noir. So that's set in the 1930s. So we got a lot of different tones going on, but they're all in the same world.
They're all
And
That's
different,
cool.
different timeline. Well, I mean, different points in history.
Yeah, mine is going to be all the same world, even when it's not the same world. It's the same world, whatever, you know. But I want to do fantasy. I want to do superheroes. I don't know if I'm smart enough to write a detective story, although I have a detective character I want to do. I actually have two, but I don't know. People could be like, I could have solved that in the first page. Your hero is not that smart.
I don't think so. Yeah, I'd say do it. That's cool though. I guess I never considered putting them in the same universe, but I do. I like that idea. But
I even have this like mythological story that I've been wanting to do for years and years and years. And I'm like, it has to be its own thing. And then I'm like, no, it doesn't. Like if we could accept superheroes and Greek gods and stuff like that, I could have this mythological story set in the same world. But I don't know. I got to get this done first. I got so many ideas, but so little time.
I do think as readers, I mean there is nothing like reading a Daredevil comic and Captain America shows up. There was no thrill like seeing two characters like cross over, and I think we all just want it all the time.
Well, it's funny that you said that, because back in the 70s and 80s, like Daredevil was in his own little corner of Marvel Universe, and then all of a sudden, like, wait a minute, Spider-Man's in this issue, and it was a big deal. But like the X-Men were, like, I guess segregated, pun intended, that they were in their own little mutant world, and you never really saw Daredevil interact with the X-Men, to the point somewhere around like the Bendis years, like Ghost Rider and Daredevil and Squirrel Girl were all on the same team, and it, like, to me, like it took out like the distinction of Marvel. Like Spider-Man was not an Avenger, Wolverine was not an Avenger, and now that there's the Avengers are Spider-Man, Ghost Rider, Thor, the Sentry, and I was like, oh, so you just took all of the Marvel characters and you put them on a team, and like there's nothing that, like, the Avengers lost its flavor. The Defenders, like Nighthawk wasn't on the Avengers. What? Hellcat wasn't on, well, she was on the Avengers, but like Valkyrie.
Defenders were B-list Avengers.
Yeah. Like there should have been like Storm doesn't join, like Rogue, Storm, and Cyclops aren't on the Avengers. Like, but they did. Like at one point, Reed Richards and the Invisible Woman joined the Avengers, and I'm like, that's wrong. That breaks the rules. Spider-Man is not a team player. He shouldn't be on anybody's team.
Was that Tom DeFalco? I think it might have been.
I might, yeah, it was during
Was
Tom
it?
DeFalco. I didn't want to bring up all the problems at the time. Yeah.
I do agree with you. I think it was Avengers disassembled whenever things kind of went crazy, right?
Yeah.
And then
Like I said, Brian Michael Bendis is patient zero of
and I do agree. I like them being in the same universe, but not putting Wolverine on the Avengers is crazy. But yeah,
Although
just,
I have to say that Avengers versus X-Men, that was phenomenally done. I think it was Sal Buscema who did that as well.
that 4-issue series.
Yep.
Yeah. That was Sal Buscema. But like, I like each comic had their own flavor, and it was fun once in a while when we cross pollinated, but then everything, okay. So the, like, in the world of the Punisher, I intellectually understand that there's a guy who shoots laser beams out of his eyes named Cyclops, but like, doesn't matter. But then if Cyclops is showing up in the Punisher comic every week or whatever, you're like, who cares about a guy with a gun? Or an indestructible Hulk, like, okay, that really ruins the tension of a guy who's taking out street crime. So, yeah, I don't know. What does it have to do with our own comics? I don't know, but like, I do have like a street level guy who I want him to exist in his street level corner of the Heroic Tales universe. And it's funny because his second appearance is going to be a crossover, but whatever. I can't do a monthly comic. I can't do 12 monthly comics. So they each develop their own little unique flavor. Well, how there's something interesting. RJ, you got like 1 million characters already. Let's just pretend, the Fourth Age is a big company, and you could have like monthly titles. Would you give your characters their own titles and teams, and you know what I mean? Like Fabrizio is drawing Pulse, and how would that work out? Would you have crossovers and cross continuity events?
Yeah, my world works. We haven't really gotten into it yet very much, except for the fact that there's this warp barrier between the two cities. But my world works in a very strange way that I never delved into yet. In the fact that a lot of the superheroes are concentrated in very specific areas, and the rest of the country, the rest of the world's like, yeah, that doesn't really exist. They're making a show of it or something like that, right? So. There's a very heavy concentration, like in the area which normally you'd think of as New York or Moscow or places like that.
You just made me think of something. Like Horace H. Hoover is investigating in New York, and he's an oddball character. Not everybody else is walking around with helmets that look like vacuum cleaners and pockets full of, I can only assume, magic spells and things like that. So does Sacramento have like an oddball character that is like their local hero, occult detective? Is there something about New York? Is he an oddity? Is he unique in the whole world? Are there other?
I mean, this is a bit of a spoiler, but I mean, why not? I don't know. He is an oddity to some degree. How do I put this? He's an oddity of oddities, actually. There are other people that he'll interact with that can do similar things to him. They are all, man, I don't want to spoil.
If you don't want to spoil, you don't want to.
I don't, but he, like in the world of oddities, he's an oddity even. But he will meet other people that he will go on investigations with or into battle with, and so they do exist, and I've done drawings of them, but I've tried not to spoil too much.
All right, well, I gotta run, guys. My stream is about to start in 1 minute, so thank you very much for this conversation.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so there's the Pittsburgh, the Pittsburgh Plunderer or something.
Yeah, I mean, day to day though, Horace walking down the street, people would react to him like we would expect. There's a guy with a thing on his head. Now, this is New York in the 20s and 30s, and there's some weird stuff going on. I make a crack in the first issue where the taxi driver is like, I don't know if this is where you and your theater group want to go.
Yeah.
People just make excuses. I don't know. It's New York. There's things, or So, but it's not normal and it's not expected. Even other than the people that know him and have seen him, kind of expect it from him.
Yeah, I guess it would be like, like you said, circus performers, or like seeing Harry Houdini or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of eccentric people in New York at that time, coming from different places, doing different things. So, but it's still odd, no doubt.
Okay, I'm just curious if we're going to learn about like the Boston. I don't know. The Boston.
I know you talk about this, not wanting to spoil things. It is so hard because
and I'm terrible. You asked me 3 times. I'm like, okay, all right.
I know. But here's the other thing, too, and I'll be completely honest. There's a part of me that's like, what if somebody comes out with an idea similar to these things that I have written, that this whole, like the foundation of Horace H. Hoover is built on this idea, basically. And, what if somebody else comes out with something similar, and I just have to dismiss it? I'm like, listen, I came up with it. It's written. It's been, every issue, everything has been based on that foundation. If somebody comes along with something similar, doesn't have anything to do with me, basically.
Yeah, I keep talking about I changed one of my characters because I called him the Raven. He was my Batman type character, you know. And the final straw was I had a guy on my channel whose comic was coming out, and he was a Raven. You know, he was like a 40s pulp hero aviator type guy called the Raven. Even though my guy was just Batman called the Raven. You know, instead of a bat cape, he had a feather cape and, you know, a bird's. It was literally a ripoff of Bat. And part of me is glad because I came up. You're one of the people who've seen the design of the new guy. Like I think it's so much better. You know, it made this. I think it's going to make the story a little better. But there's certain things. I know what you're saying. Like if somebody like I kind of heard somebody mention something. I'm like, that's suspiciously close to one of my central ideas, and doesn't matter. I have to keep it. I can't.
Yeah. There is a short story that I had written, I don't know, 15 years ago or something like that. And I know this sounds so like cliched, but it was a dream. I had a dream and I dreamt a full story start to finish. So it's pretty ethereal. It's a little abstract, but there's structure to it. I knew I had to get it down. And I had read a story a couple of years ago. I'm like, man, there's something close-ish to my dream, for Christ's sake. Like, I'm like, I'm not giving up my dream, you know. That happened. It was many years ago. So, but it's tough though. You wonder, and like, I don't want people to think I stole something, but there's a billion people writing stories and comics and movies and screenplays every day, and there's a lot of overlap, and I might never have read anybody's or watched some TV show. So it's tough, but
yeah, like when Stranger Things came out, they went into the Upside Down, and the way the guy was described, I'm like, this is literally like one of the central ideas of the way my universe works. You know, I'm like if you go to my forum, you'll read story upon story, like, and I'm not redoing the way my universe works. Like I might not do that particular story. Like I didn't call it the Upside Down. I called it the Umbra, you know, because it was shadows, and literally like the creatures there were like extended shadowy beings because I came from here and whatever. But this is like a barrier that, just like a vampire can't cross a threshold into a house, the Umbra creates a barrier that protects the universe from things beyond. And sometimes these things hang out on the Umbra, and then they'll capture people, devour them, or some of the humans that live there will turn into these shadow elongated. And I'm like, it's too close to the Upside Down. And but it's a central cornerstone. I'm keeping it.
Yeah.
If anybody calls me on it, I have the forum where you could actually see I wrote these stories down years before Stranger Things, but I can't wait to like.
So
from Stranger Things, no, I didn't.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I watched this interview with David Lynch, and they brought something up like that, very similar, and basically his response was very simple. And he's like, "Listen, if it's new to you, it's new to you," and that was it. Like, if you know if you stole it, if you didn't steal it, then it's your idea. Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, damn it! Like he said it with such confidence.
Like me and my friends, we were playing our role playing game. The story was this meteorite crash, typical superhero story, you know. And then, you know, but they're in their superhero had, you know, like most superheroes, they don't react until something happens. This monster starts attacking, and then they find out eyewitnesses a meteor crashed. They investigate. It wasn't a meteor. It was actually like a Sputnik type satellite. So Sputnik crash opens up, and it turns out this radioactive undead monkey. So it turns out, you know, in the 60s, Soviets sent up this monkey into space. They lost track of it. They buried the story, sent up another monkey into space. That's the one but the original monkey died getting hit by cosmic radiation. And for 30, 40 years, it just absorbed radiation. And when the decay, it hit the ground, and an undead cosmic powered monkey. It was not the greatest story in the world, but it was a
It's
good
fun.
hero. So now they're fighting this undead cosmic powered monkey, and he had Kirby Crackle and basically had the powers of Silver Sword, and it was a great slugfest. Well, I'm not even joking. Like 4 months later, Marvel, DC Comics, Vertigo came out with a comic called Minx, and one of the subplots was a monkey from Soviet Union crashed, didn't have cosmic powers, but it was basically an undead monkey came out of this book. And I'm like, how am I going to explain to people, this, so I was like, the joke was, I'm like, DC and Marvel are bugging my room and stealing all my ideas. Like,
Yeah.
but I look at it as that guy, I think it was Peter Milligan. We're reading the same comics. We're reading the same Doctor Strange comics and watching the same movies,
Yeah, I really think that's what it is. And here's the other thing too: is I've always wanted to someday is take an H.P. Lovecraft story, in particular Shadow over Innsmouth, and just pull out the main character and put in Horace H. Hoover, and just see what happens, just to show that you can have everything the same, the character but just change one thing, the main character, it is a different story. Even if you wanted it to be the same, it wouldn't.
I'm telling you right now, it's going to happen sooner or later if I make it long enough. Instead of From Beyond, it's going to be one of my characters.
So I'm very confident that even if you have the same idea, the same premise, it's still a different story. And people honestly won't even think about it because it's coming from you.
And last night, I was like, I could work the Mountains of Madness into Heroic Tales. Like,
that would be cool.
So it's gonna happen sooner or later. They're going. What lies beyond Antarctica? Like, I will tell people where the Mountains of Madness really are, even though we have maps and they're not there. But they are there because if you know where they really are,
that's cool.
Yeah, I have a superhero team that's what they do. They explore the bizarre and occult parts of the earth.
Yeah, whenever I came up with Horace H. Hoover, I made a vow. I'm like, I am not going to Google this. I am not going to Google occult detective, vacuum cleaner. No combination of words that could possibly dissuade me from moving forward until I was done with his background, his power, everything. I'm like, you know what? Once that is done, it's my character, and then I will Google vacuum cleaner detective. I never did. I never ended up doing that anyway because.
So you never saw Walter W. Westinghouse, the Washington detective?
No, I didn't. Yeah, and it's a weird thing as a writer. Like the patriarch lives in your head. Like he is a character. Horace H. Hoover is a character. And so that's why even if there was somebody that came, another character with a vacuum cleaner on his head, it's not Horace H. Hoover in my head. So,
and let's face it, how many cape flying super guys are there? It's everything. It's all the little things that change him up. I did it on purpose. I wanted people to think of Superman when they see the Patriarch, and then at the same time, I want them to know how that they're different. So that's kind of what the first issue is like, he looks like Superman, he's like Superman, but he's different than Superman. Okay, we got that out of the way. Issue 2, we're going to talk about ancient horrors and all the other stuff, but here's issue 1, so you understand he's like Superman but not really.
Yeah, I've thought about this for a while. Really the key, I think, I guess we'll see, is tapping into an archetype and then, like you said, changing things. So it's almost like you're overwriting the archetype. Like, I've tapped into this archetype, so I get all of the benefits of that comes with it, but then I just tweak it a little bit, and it becomes your own thing.
And that's, to me, why I get so mad of all of these gender swapped and race swapped characters. You could do it. Like, you want a female Human Torch, you don't just get rid of Johnny Storm. You make another one.
Yep.
I have a female Human Torch in another comic book. Like, if I show you the picture, you immediately know the archetype, and it's a new character, and nobody can get mad at me because it's a new character. Well,
Yeah.
obviously I don't control the Human Torch, but you know what I mean. Like, you get it. It's not that hard, ladies and gentlemen. I'm actually going to pull up a picture just to show you what I'm talking about. But you know, 900 million people. Every time I go live, people start calling me. My friends think it's funny. Where is Oscar? So, I think I've shown you all of these sketches. But here, I'm just going to show one. I'm going to spoil a character. It's not really spoiling if I've done it 3 times already, is it? Oh, here we go. Oh, my stupid mouse.
Speaking of archetypes, like for me, Slurp, I'm like, I love Nosferatu. I need to incorporate him into the comic. That was really the goal. It's just, I'm like, I just want to draw Nosferatu. But invariably, it turns into something else. Slurp is not Nosferatu. But, you know, you can see where the archetype came from.
So I made up a character, Femfire. This is for a side
Cool.
project. And these characters are comic book characters in the Heroic Tales world. So like patriarch has children. His kids would be reading comics. This would be a comic book character. But do you get the archetype? She's a flaming. And so a flaming superhero. They're brash. They're hot.
Yeah.
There's a whole slew of preconceived notions that go with these characters. So like I don't need to take Johnny Storm. Like if I was to do Marvel Comics and I wanted to, I could create another character to fill that role that I wanted to. And I don't understand why people need to gender swap Spider-Man. Like you just make up a character, guys. It takes some thought, but it's not that tough. Femfire. It's a cool name.
Yeah.
Described it to Oscar, and Oscar drew her.
It's a great costume design, and it's finished. It feels like a finished character. I think whenever they try to like gender swap or do something to Captain America, it feels like an unfinished idea.
Right. Yeah, because the people aren't thinking of it. Here's another one. Now you got me spoiled. The Mystery.
Oh, cool.
Like,
yeah, that's great.
I like to think, just because of Oscar's rendition, you know a lot more about this character than you think. Just the mystery. What is he?
Yep. Yeah, that's great.
So there you go. They're all part of the top 10 for a side project that I'll probably launch Heroic Tales #2 and then do a campaign for Eddie is Doomed is the name of that comic.
You know what I always think about, like speaking of like taking established characters, I was thinking about Nomad. Like Steve Rogers, it's a simple costume, but it's iconic. All of a sudden, I'm not gonna say it's on par with Captain America, but it's close. It's not as hard as
because he was a man without a country, and that's what you know what I mean. It worked on so many levels.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. I get, excuse me, I get so mad when I see all these people just like, okay, we're gonna just Iron Man, but now Iron Man's isn't. Just make up new characters. Part of me thinks they're probably like a little smarter that they don't want to give their good ideas to Marvel, because they don't own it. You know what I mean? Like,
that's interesting. I never thought about that before, honestly.
Like I always say that, I want to write the Fantastic Four, but you better believe if I'm writing Fantastic Four, I'm using Galactus, the Molecule Man, the Impossible Man. I'm not making up a new character. What am I going to get a ticket to the movie premiere? And that, to show my nephews that there's my name. What else did you get? I got this ticket. I got this. By the way, I had to buy you tickets to get in here.
Yeah, that's interesting. I wonder if working for Marvel and DC nowadays, and I honestly don't know the answer to this, gives you enough cachet if you're an artist or a writer to be able to pivot into your own crowdfunding. It doesn't seem like there is enough.
Well, look at the Wright Project. How much Tom DeFalco and Sal Buscema, and they did the same amount as I did.
Yeah.
And that's wrong. They should have blown me out of the water. But
yeah, I couldn't believe it. It really blew my mind.
Now I gotta look to see if it's on eBay. Because I was like, "What is the right project?" And here I'm talking to a guy, and I'm like, "Oh, I didn't even know your project." So I'm gonna go because at 11 o'clock I'm
Yeah.
gonna another show. So I want to go have an hour to say hello to my wife. I haven't even seen her yet.
Man,
Just
well-
came home from work. I was already on with Tom, and then you. So anything I didn't bring up or talk about? that you
No,
want-
just anybody's interested in Horace H. Hoover, go to horsehoover.com. Issues 1 through 3 are done. It's called Detective Mystery. It's fun. Any questions? I have a YouTube channel. I usually stream 3 o'clock on Sundays. That's pretty fun. We get to hang out. So
Yep.
thanks for having me. It's always
Yeah.
fun chatting comics and
Yeah,
other
one of
things.
my
So
favorite people to talk to. You know, I enjoy having you on. So at 11 o'clock, I'm going to do what I call Comics Great. And spoiler, because I'm the worst with spoilers. I'm going to have a guy from New Zealand who is a big V&V fan, and we're going to go through all of these Villains and Vigilantes modules.
oh, wow.
Some of these are Bill Willingham's first works.
That's fun.
Dan Panosian's first works. So that's what we're going to talk about tonight.
That's cool.
All right. See ya.
Thanks.
All right. Bye-bye, everybody. Oh, I almost just clicked it off. I got to end the stream. Otherwise, it messes